What if Craig Conroy and I had a Freaky Friday situation and I became general manager for a week?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jessica Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at Monarch Money for 50% off of your first year. Today, we are going to kick off a week-long extravaganza of me being general manager of the Calgary Flames. This could go very well. This could also go somewhat poorly. But at the end of the day, we all know that the Flames have some to-do lists to work, some tasks to work through their to-do list this offseason, and I thought today would be a great day to start this project. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. All right, Connor Zary, you're signing a contract extension. That would be my first task, and I'm not leaving my office until it's done. I would lock myself in the Saddle Dome and make sure that Connor Zary and the Flames come to an agreement and we get that contract signed. But what does it take for that to, how do we get that accomplished? We don't really have any insight with where things kind of stand with Zary and the Flames and his agent and everything like that. With Zary being an RFA, obviously this helps the Flames because they still have control over the players' rights and things like that. But I think the way the season ended for Zary, with that unfortunate re-injury of the knee, hurts his case. And I hate to see that, especially with how well his season was going and how just dominant he was for the Flames. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but 61 points in 117 games, little over, like, basically a half a point per player game. Not bad. Obviously, we'd like to see a little bit more, but there's still plenty of room for him to grow. He is only 23 years old, and he'll be 24 when the season starts, but he has shown that potential, right? We have seen a lot of players come into this organization and never be able to find their footing and hold on to it. I'm thinking like Walker Dewar, Adam Ruzicka, there's more players, but it's hard to really feel like, okay, Nick DeSimone, Dennis Gilbert. Now, granted, defensemen are a little bit different, but it's tough to watch talented players, potentially slip through your fingers, or players just not amount to what you expected. And obviously Connor Zary exceeded those expectations. He was a first-round draft pick back in 2020. Season was obviously kind of derailed by something. And it's really hard to look at those players that were drafted that year, and obviously, 2-3 years later, and how their development was impacted due to the lack of professional hockey that was being played, and kind of their transition from I guess boyhood to pro athletehood. But I think that Connor Zary has definitely kind of fit right in. His jump to the NHL was unexpected. I personally thought it was going to be premature and he needed a little bit more time, but nope. Connor came right in and took over that net front presence role. Him, Kadri, and Pospisil on the same line were fantastic. And it was something that was so fun and so special to watch. And to watch him continue his dominance from his rookie season into this year prior to injury was special. And I think a lot of people are entirely rooting for him, no doubt. And they're excited to have a young, fun forward again. We have seen his shot, his accuracy, his great hockey IQ, how quick he is with his hands. I mean, there was a clip from earlier in the season where he was like bouncing the puck on his stick and while skating and was compared, similar to, Johnny Gaudreau in terms of how quick his hands are. And it's just really nice to see this after really lacking any sort of hope and excitement for recent draft picks. It kind of just felt like, great, what do we do? Because everyone was just kind of staying in the Wranglers system, or they never stuck in the Flames lineup, or they'd get placed on waivers and then they'd get claimed, and you couldn't really do much with that. But Connor Zary is a very exciting player, and I completely understand the excitement and eagerness to get him signed, especially before offer sheets potentially start rolling around. I don't think that Connor Zary is necessarily the hottest target for an offer sheet, like, say, a Matthew Nyes, but I really wouldn't put it past a team to try it. Coming up next, we are going to talk about Connor Zary's injury history. What is his role on this team? How does he fit into the Flames picture? And of course, using Matt Coronato's recent extension as a reference and getting a deal done for him. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Yeah, me too. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is super easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, and giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was actually spending on food delivery to work, and now I pack my lunch and use those extra dollars for my next trip to Calgary. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And welcome and back to this trip through re-signing Connor Zary, as I am the Flames general manager for the week. And I think that would be a really fun task, but also really daunting, because there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of people you have to communicate with. You can't just go hide in the bathroom and play on your phone for 10 minutes because you don't want to do work. There is always something to do. And starting with that is really unpacking a player. And it's not just their stats, it's not just, how they are in the locker room, it is their history. Well, Connor Zary has obviously had a very solid resume offensively and on the score sheet. But one thing that is a cause for concern is, of course, his injury history. So let's rewind the clocks a little bit. We're gonna work through a timeline of injuries up to where we are now in 2025. So back in 2021, he suffered a pretty gnarly ankle injury that kept him out. He only played 24 games between the AHL and WHL that season. That's brutal, right? Because that's your first year after being drafted. And there's so much happening and so much changing that, your whole life is like in a whirlwind. And then here you are in a brand new city. And like at that point, they were still in Stockton. So like you're in a whole nother country and you don't necessarily have the best start to your season with this ankle injury. And it's tough. It is tough because obviously you want to start off on the best foot, make the best impression because you only get one first impression. The next year, he came back and dealt with a lower body injury that kept him out for a game, and then an upper body injury, which, of course, based on proximity to where things were, I would suspect it was a concussion. I'm not a doctor, but I am pretty good at deductive reasoning, process of elimination sort of situation. And that is a concern. I think that really any injury is, I don't want to say a red flag because that makes it sound like it's his fault and like his problem. But any sort of head injury kind of sends off a little like bell. You have to keep an eye on that. That is something that it's not like a broken ankle where you can, wear a cast or if you have to have surgery and in 6 to 8 weeks it's healed. Concussions can last a very long time, and if you have repeated concussions, obviously there is so there's consequences to that, and it's scary. And we think about Martin Pospisil all the time and how he's 25 years old and has to wear a tinted visor because of migraines due to post-concussion syndrome. But with Zary, you do have to think about all of these injuries, and there's still a little bit more to come. But, let's take things into consideration. Okay. Yes. Does an immediate injury when he enters the pros kind of raise some eyebrows? Yes, of course. Could it also have been just a complete accident? Yes. He could, again, your body's going through so much, your mind's going through so much as your life is changing rapidly, a whirlwind. And you know what? I don't necessarily think it's someone's fault when they break a bone in a hockey game or in a sporting event. Unless, they're doing something stupid. But these are grown men throwing themselves against each other. We've seen how easy it is to get tangled up. And like Anthony Mantha's injury earlier this season, non-contact ACL injury, ACL tear, cool. It just happened. So these things happen. But then what I worry about is his knee injuries from this season. And I think for me, this does create a little more of a, I don't want to say red flag, but this is kind of circled on under things I'm concerned about because it is the same knee within 7-8 weeks of the original injury. Not great because the original injury was probably beginning to, really fully heal. And then Mikko Rantanen decides, I don't want to skate anymore, and just rolls around on the ice and barrels into you. A grown man. I don't know. Obviously, you can't control all the aspects on the ice, but if his knee had not been injured previously in such a close proximity of timing, would this season-ending injury actually be season-ending? A lot of people thought the original knee injury back against Anaheim was going to be season-ending because it truly looked like it could have been an MCL, ACL issue, but he avoided surgery, no breaks, and not rushing him back is fine. I think that that is completely understandable, especially when, yes, you could have used him in your lineup, but is it worth that risk? No, it's not. His injuries were super unfortunate, and just knowing how important Zary is to this organization and like his role within the Flames organization is important. And obviously keeping everyone healthy is important at any point in their career, regardless of its short-term, long-term picture. But it was likely the better decision to keep him out long-term and just let him fully heal. He didn't need surgery. It wasn't a fracture. Things were okay. So, do you have this specific injury or these specific injuries kind of circled in your mind as you go into these contract negotiations? Not because you don't think he should make as much because of missing time because of these injuries, no, but because he has a vulnerable spot. He has a vulnerable position in with his knees. Um, like I think about Jack Hughes with his shoulders. Like to me, that's a vulnerable situation there. Like that's really it. And I often find myself wondering what do these players need to do in order to make this less of an issue? But coming up next, we're going to take a look at Matt Coronato's recent contract extension and justifying a contract extension for Zary, as I am the Flames general manager. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames and making Locked On Flames part of your day. Make sure you are following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Jessica Belmosto. So for me, I like to give this disclaimer when discussing contracts, trades, negotiations, anything like that. I do not see myself as someone who is an expert in putting deals together. Hence why I sit here and judge everyone's deals, because is it something I would do or wouldn't do? But in all seriousness, do you go a bridge deal, 3 to 4 years, or do you go long term, 7, 8 years? What do you do? And I think obviously with Zary, you have his injury history. He played one full season with the Wranglers before making his jump to the pros. So his development, his development was different from a lot of his teammates due to injury, due to the pandemic, due to, restrictions, things like that. And using Coronato as a reference here, I think feels pretty fair because They both walked into out of the season as RFAs. And they were both two young players that came in and took the Flames offense by storm. One full great season with the Flames. His rookie season, Coronato's rookie season, was not great. It was kind of a cause for concern. Hence why he, was a point per game player in the AHL last year and had to work his way back to an NHL roster spot. He had like the opposite of a sophomore slump. And that's the same thing I would say for Connor Zary as well. Just two very offensively dominant players. And a lot of us said it all season long. Matt Coronato and Connor Zary are two of your young forwards that you want to kind of build around and build out. I think that there's a lot of potential there. Your main issue is going to be getting a strong center. I mean, we know that that's an issue for the Flames as it is, but what do you do? Matt Coronato came to the table and said, I don't want a bridge deal. Okay, great. That is fantastic. But again, we do not know where things stand with Zary. If I am Craig Conroy, I am going to potentially lean more towards the bridge deal because of the injuries. And we don't know the significance of damage that has happened. I mean, he's young. He's in very good shape. I'm not concerned about him recovering, but does a 3 to 4 year deal, say at $3.5 million, make sense? I mean, yeah, I would say so. Or I'm on the complete opposite side of this as well, saying go big or go home with a 7-year deal at $5.5 million. Could you possibly do like Coronato's making 6.5, so do you maybe do like a 6.8? Because he has played more consistent hockey than Coronato? Like, do you see why I could never actually do this? But I would absolutely test the waters. And in my day job, my current day job, I have to ask a lot of questions to kind of get to what the customer and the client want. And that's fine. Because at the end of the day, it is my job to sell this person something. And at the end of my day as Craig Conroy, my first day as Flames general manager, it is my job to be on the same page as Connor Zary and his agent. Does he want a bridge deal? Would he be offended if I brought him a bridge deal? What does you have to gauge the temperature somehow? Or do I just go big or go home and say, hey, here's a 7-year deal at $6.8 million? I don't know. I think I would honestly sign him to either. Like, I see the pros and cons to both. But if he hits that peak and does everything you need him to, and then at the end of that 3 years, he's a UFA, and your team is about like on the cusp of really making a true run for the playoffs, you lose him in free agency. We are right back where we started in 2022. I think that locking him up long term also has drawbacks, because what if it is a situation where he is just a middle six player and not consistently producing? I do not think that that's going to be the case. I think that he is going to be a consistent scorer for the Flames, but in all seriousness, like, because they don't have too many players, like young players under long contracts like that, sure. You know what? Here's 7-year deal. Would you be insulted if I handed you a $6.8 million average annual value, whatever? Would you be upset about that? Would you be offended if I handed you a 3 or 4 year bridge deal at about $3.5 million? I think if I had to present an offer today to get this done, it would be the 7-year deal. You shoot for the stars, right? And then you kind of meet in the middle if you have to. If term's not an issue, great. But the salary is okay, super negotiable, super to me that's a little bit easier to fix, especially in the rising cap era, than the term. Because you don't want a player to take you to arbitration. So if you just do like a 1-year deal and he takes you to arbitration next year, that's awkward. It is uncomfortable. It puts a strain on the relationship, and you just rather not do it. And if you want to avoid them hitting the open market in their prime, that is something you just have to do. And I, as Flames general manager for the week, am presenting Connor Zary with a 7-year contract with an average annual value of 6.5. Just kidding. That's the same amount as Matt Coronato. I would probably shoot for 6.8. And if realistically, if he wanted 7, sure, I don't care. It's a rising cap era. I'm just a general manager for a week. I don't have to think about the long term. But realistically, yes, I'm fine with signing him long term. I understand why people might want to sign him to a bridge deal, but personally, just lock him up long term. Let's do it. Let's get this core cooking. And that'll do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for joining me, and we will continue down the path of week of a general manager here on Locked On Flames tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And until then, bye-bye.